Gas prices hit another record high today. Tomorrow, Americans head to polls in 5 states. Exclusive NewsNation polling shows rising prices and inflation are the top issue for voters. Well, we'll see how it plays tomorrow. Then we have to figure out how it's going to play in November. President Biden says the U.S. will defend Taiwan if China invades, how the U.S. could prevent a Chinese attack coming up. But we start in Georgia. Former Vice President Mike Pence joined Governor Brian Kemp on stage tonight in a final round of campaigning before tomorrow's primaries. Voters head to the polls in Georgia, Alabama, that would be Arkansas, Texas, and Minnesota. The New York Times saying Democrats fight headwinds as the election season rolls on. The paper putting it this way for November: the problem is the reality. Scott Tranter, our number guys at Decision Desk HQ, joins us. He'll be calling the races tomorrow night. Is there anything we're really watching to be that close, Scott?
It looks like there'll be a few down ballot races, but probably the marquee race to look at tomorrow night is the Alabama Republican Senate primary. You've got former Congressman Mo Brooks. You've got Katie Britt, who was the former chief of staff for former Senator Richard Shelby. You got businessman Durant. There was a poll that came out over the weekend that basically had them all within a few points and all under the runoff threshold. So we could see a close race tomorrow and then another round here in June.
So if Mo Brooks makes it into the runoff, having been endorsed by President Trump and having the dubious distinction of that endorsement then pulled very publicly, is this more another chapter in the book of Trump losing control of Trumpism?
I don't know that that's how he would characterize it, but yeah, if we look at just the facts of who he's
Scott, we'll
endorsed,
characterize it with the truth.
That's probably the best way to do it. He's had an interesting 4 weeks, right? He started off in Ohio, and he endorsed J.D. Vance, the eventual winner. Then we went to Nebraska, and he endorsed the loser in that high-profile gubernatorial race. And then we're still seeing the Pennsylvania GOP Senate playing out. It looks like his favorite candidate, Mehmet Oz, is going to win out, but that one's going to go to lawsuits, and that one's going to go to a recount. So we won't know that one for a while. And Mo Brooks did not have had his endorsement early on. He pulled it, and it'd be interesting to see if Mo Brooks does go to the runoff and then eventually wins in the runoff. I think where the momentum is with Katie Britt, but it's close enough. There's not a lot of polling, and we wouldn't be watching this closely if there wasn't a couple surprises.
All right, so we go to Georgia. It seems like Herschel Walker is going to win the Republican Senate nomination. Stacey Abrams wins the Democratic governor nomination. So that brings us now to Kemp versus Perdue. Kemp is the incumbent governor, and then President Trump endorsed David Perdue, the former senator, as a anti-election fraud candidate because the president was upset. Former president was upset about those things. Listen to Kemp at the rally tonight.
When you vote for Brian Kemp tomorrow, you will say yes to a future of freedom here in Georgia. And when you say yes to Governor Brian Kemp tomorrow, you will send a deafening message all across America that the Republican Party is the party of the future.
And that the Republican Party is not the party of Donald Trump.
Yeah, they say politics is all about posturing, and that's a big posture move by former Vice President Mike Pence, going down, not just endorsing, but doing the rally right before the election for a candidate that former President Donald Trump openly dislikes and vehemently disapproves of. And it looks like, Brian Kemp's going to win tomorrow. It remains whether he's going to get over 50% to avoid a runoff. But that's not unheard of and could happen tomorrow, which would be a big rebuke of President Trump endorsement in that state.
For as much as made about November right now, we're still 158, 172, something like that, days ahead. You think about how people think about the economy. 69% say the economy is bad. 90+% say that they're worried about inflation and the like. I'd like to meet the people who say they are not. But that said, can we predict how this polling is going to influence November?
I don't know if we can predict, but we can look at past past instances when we've had economic polling data this bad. I mean, the other thing out of the NewsNation poll was roughly 65% of Americans say they or they know someone who's been impacted by high prices, inflation, and all the economic woes we're feeling. So even if it doesn't impact you directly, you know someone who has. And we're coming out of a pandemic where people want to spend money, they want to travel, things are expensive, gas is high, etc. I'm not an economist, so maybe this turns around tomorrow, but if it doesn't, and we're still talking about this in a few months, come this fall, it's certainly going to weigh on all of our elected officials' elections prospects, Republican or Democrat.
Yeah, it is the economy, stupid. After the economy, you can worry about everything else. All politics are also local, so now we look at likely Democratic Senate candidates that in these crucial swing states. John Fetterman in Pennsylvania, Biden polls at 45%. Tim Ryan in Ohio, Mr. Biden at 40%. Raphael Warnock, the incumbent in Georgia, Mr. Biden at 42%. Arizona, Mark Kelly, there the president's approval rating is 40%. This goes to what the New York Times said is the problem is reality. And the president is having to, anybody who's running for Senate has to run against, effectively, President Biden's approval numbers. What are the other numbers in those polls that we need to pull out and think about?
One other poll or another number we look at is just the generic ballot. You know, if you were to vote generically for the Republican or Democrat in your race, who would you vote for? And the Republicans have been polling, they've been maintaining anywhere from a 2 to 6 point lead in NewsNation polling over the last few months, and that's pretty big. When we saw the wave back in 2010 where Republicans took the House, they also had the lead back then. When the Democrats retook it a few cycles later, they had the lead, and so that's a pretty big leading indicator. I think it's interesting when you put those candidates up there, we will be talking in the fall of who controls the Senate based on how many of those people win this fall. You know, does Fetterman pull it out in Pennsylvania? Does Warnock pull it out in Georgia? And this could go either way. You know, it's still early, but if you look at the President Biden approval in those states, you look at the generic ballot, you look at the economic numbers, it is not, you know, going in tonight, you're not, if you're the Democratic Party, you're not looking at those numbers with a whole lot of hope for the fall. But it's the fall. A lot can happen between now and the end.
Yeah, but the economy, as you point out, drives so many decisions. If 44% are canceling vacation plans because of inflation and costs and how they feel economically, that changes a lot that really no other issue for the general election is as important. When it comes to primaries, though, it's different issues, as you always point out to us. House Democrats' only abortion foe, the only pro-life Democrat right now, Henry Cuellar in Texas, is in a very tight primary runoff tomorrow with a far left progressive. Cuellar's been outspoken about the border and the problems with immigration and the Biden policy and the like. What do we make of that there are still progressive challengers to sitting Democrats?
Well, we make of it, you know, the progressive wing of the Democratic Party is certainly trying to make its mark. They have a bona fide star in AOC and the rest of the squad, and they're very influential in their party, and they're very popular with their base, and they're probably going to be around for a while. And so they want to see if they can get more people like them into their party. And they're going to have some wins this primary season and this wins this general. The Cisneros race you bring up is very interesting because that's a part of Texas that is largely Hispanic. It's an area where President Trump actually made some gains among the Hispanic community. It's along the border, goes San Antonio all along to the border. It's actually a fairly religious portion of the country, and so that's why we see Cuellar being pro-life. I think the lone Democratic congressman who's pro-life in there, and his opponent is actually a former intern of his. And then compounded with the fact the FBI raided his house about a week before the last election, and he was still able to pull off a runoff. So there's a whole lot of angles there, but the most interesting one to me is what I said at the top is demographically large Hispanic, large pro-life. Donald Trump did well there. That is a progressive versus a blue dog or a moderate Democrat. That's gonna set the tone for some of these other races we got coming up in New York, California, some of these other states.
As we look specifically going forward in some of the primaries, have we gotten to the point where we can say either President Trump has real influence over Republican voters or not, in, to use one of your words, a statistically significant way?
Yeah, it's probably not, I shouldn't say probably, it's definitely not as definite as he would like it to make it seem. But look, he still pulls in donors. He still has people come to Mar-a-Lago and seek out his endorsement. They want him to come to rallies, so he certainly has an effect.
When you poll President Trump versus President Trump's policies, or the sort of MAGA without the crazy policies, is there a difference in how those two things poll?
Yeah, the policies tend to the most of the policies around immigration, business, those types of things tend to poll very well among the Republican electorate, because those are the unifying things, and they look at his presidency as the way he's done. As far as his presidency, his personality, there's a lot of people who like him because of the policy, but there's a lot of people who, in polls when he used to tweet, they used to say, look, we like the guy, but we wish he'd tweet less.
Yeah.
And so that kind of gives you an idea of where the split is a little bit.
All right. Well, perhaps it will not be as late of a night tomorrow night as it was for all of us with Pennsylvania. Scott, good to see you. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
All right.
Do you want to be on the side of Dr. King or George Wallace? Do you want to be on the side of John Lewis or Bull Connor?
The new Georgia election law?
It's an atrocity.
This makes Jim Crow look like Jim Eagle.
That was President Biden on election reform that passed in Georgia. He and other Democrats said Republicans wanted to suppress the vote. This primary election marked a record early turnout in the state, not just by a little bit, but by a couple of touchdowns. Kellie Meyer is in Atlanta for us tonight, where they didn't even have them Major League Baseball All-Star game because of this bill. Hi, Kellie.
Hey, Leland. Well, like you said, a massive bump in early voting turnout in the first test for Georgia's new voter law. Take a look at the numbers. More than 850,000 people voted in person or by absentee ballot. That's 3 times as many people as the 2018 primary, and a 212% increase over 2020. Republicans pointing at the surge as proof the new voting law isn't suppressing the vote, despite concerns from Democrats that it would. Here's former Vice President Mike Pence tonight.
Joe Biden's use of the term Jim Crow to describe a law passed here in Georgia. But now the results are in. Early voting turnout has tripled since 2018. And thanks to your governor, it is easier to vote and harder to cheat than ever before in Georgia history.
But one voting rights group I spoke to tonight saying there is a lot of context that's being left out here, and still believe voter suppression will be on display tomorrow, telling me, quote, "Don't tell me this isn't voter suppression when someone can get arrested for giving someone an umbrella tomorrow." Leland?
Okay, I guess that's... I don't know what an umbrella has to do with it, but there we go. What's this about Democrat Stacey Abrams saying she wants to be governor of Georgia? I understand this is actually her second time running. She said she won the first time. Leave it at that. She now calls Georgia, though, the worst place to live.
Well, yeah, and Republicans have been going in on this comment all day from Abrams. Perdue saying she isn't from here and she can leave. Here's that comment that you were just referring to from the Democratic candidate over the weekend. Take a listen.
I am tired of hearing about being the best state in the country to do business when we are the worst state in the country to live. Then you are not the #1 place to live in the United States, but we can get there, Gwinnett.
Abrams later went on to try to explain her comments, saying it has to do with the number of issues plaguing the state, high incarceration rates, wages going down, saying that makes it really not the #1 place to live. But for Republicans, focusing on Abrams is part of their messaging here, keeping the focus off of the Trump, Perdue, and Pence-Kemp divide and on the candidate they want to beat this November. Leland?
Yeah, now we have what would appear is going to be a rematch, Kemp-Abrams again. You can imagine the attack ads from the Kemp camp already are starting to be cut using that exact soundbite. Kellie, good to see you. Up late tomorrow night. As we watch the results come in, we'll check in there, all right?
All right, see you then, Leland. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Kellie. Thanks for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.